Greetings and welcome to the Mount Rushmore podcast. My name is Jeff, and I'm joined by my good buddies Richard.
Hello.
And Michael.
Howdy.
These folks debate and deliberate the most ubiquitous aspects of a variety of topics while picking lint off their microphones to prepare for the
That's
podcast.
right. That's right.
Nothing but the best. Nothing but the best for you guys.
Shall not have an untidy microphone.
It was not lint. It was gorilla hair.
Oh, okay. Foreshadowing of the theme, which is the Mount Rushmore of King Kong. Who chose it?
This was a Michael Winfield joint.
Of course.
Hopefully afterwards be followed by a number of Spike Lee commercials starring various basketball players with King Kong.
Yeah.
I guess the closest we ever got was what was it? Charles Barkley having a dunk contest against Godzilla. So that's really, really close. But no, this was my topic, and because of the aforementioned Godzilla and for the last 5 years mentioned my son Felix, who had a Godzilla-themed birthday party this last weekend, and this topic came out of the blue, just like Godzilla as a theme for this kid's birthday party came out of the blue. Where about a month and a half ago, we were like, so what do you want to do? And we were like, okay, this kid's going to choose Legos, because this is the only thing he talks about or thinks about right now. And he said Godzilla. And we were like, huh. All right. So we got to make that work. He's never seen a Godzilla movie. His interaction with Godzilla is all of like one kind of 99-cent store like Godzilla toy that he has like crammed under his bed currently. So like it was a real adventure to try to like figure out what's going on there. But anyway, so getting to the giant hairy monkey of it all, I thought to myself, I'm not a huge Godzilla aficionado, but boy, do I have feelings for that giant ape Kong. And I thought King Kong has just been, God, in our lives for nigh on, God, almost 100 years, 90-something years as like a thing. I mean, obviously for all of our 50 to 43-year-old bodies, he's been in our lives for that many years, but for another 50 years before us, he's been like this presence in cinema and pop culture, and has had so many different like adventures and things, and he's so cultural and so identifiable, and so like, oh, my son knows what King Kong is. He knows the entire story of King Kong, and maybe it's because I've told him and shown him the first movie from 1933, but like, I don't know. King Kong. What's not to love?
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, look, just jump right in. So it's a great choice. I would say for those who are binging Mount Rushmore podcast, I know a lot of people do, who may have heard the Nintendo episode and assumed we were just doing Kong related.
Donkey Kong, King Kong.
Yeah.
Donkey Kong Jr.
We're not. We have an area plan, but that we don't make plans here at the Mount Rushmore podcast, so it wasn't planned. So Michael chose it, so Richard starts.
All right. First choice are the special effects in the 1933 film of King Kong, the original King Kong. I am just fascinated by what it must have looked like for people in 1933 when the idea of motion pictures was still a relatively new concept. To see this giant ape climbing the Empire State Building, one of the earliest uses of stop motion animation. Ray Harryhausen was a protege of the special effects artist who did all of the Kong special effects. And, I think it just goes to show, and Michael, let me ask you this. You said you showed the original Kong to Felix.
Yes.
What was his thoughts on the special effects? Did he just think it was cool, or what did he think about how it looked?
Well, I got to say this, like with young kids, you have to start with like an original version of something, or else they're never going to go back to it once they've seen like King Kong jumping at Godzilla holding like an atomic blasted power axe that he is like to be like,
Right.
oh yeah, he kind of grimaces at you and like pokes at you and like looks at you menacingly with giant bulging eyes. Like you have to kind of have to burn that like ineffable Kong or early image of whatever. It's the same thing with like Scooby Doo. I'm gonna compare them right away. Is like I couldn't show him any like new version of Scooby Doo until he saw like the
Yeah,
original one from 1969 or 1970 or whatever it was, because he's never going to go back to that. He's got to get
yeah.
that. He's got to like imbibe that like original flavor. But like when he saw it, there's a lot of things in the first one that are you know pretty scary, kind of, for like a
Oh,
five
yeah.
year
Yeah.
old. And even though it's in black and white and in stop motion, it's like I don't know. It's a very it's a very well done movie for movies only having really existed as a format for
Mhm.
what 20 something years with
Yeah.
sound and music and all that whole business. But so like he believed every minute of it. He didn't feel like, oh, this isn't real.
Mhm. I would say in that film's a good example of, I think Dennis Muren said, of practical visual effects versus CG, that something like King Kong uh, feels real but looks kind of fake. But there's a feeling of it that you're seeing something that's real. And I would say, compared to some of the acting in that film, the
Mm.
effects are very much more realistic, and Kong as a character has some more nuance than I think some of the human performers in it. Is Felix a fan of dinosaurs? Because Kong fucks up some dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure,
Yeah.
of course. And that'll eventually lead to my first choice as well. But the special effects were so interesting because like they were doing so much that they were just kind of making it up. Like dinosaurs are kind of relatively new, and
Mhm.
I understood that they were like thinking of like just dressing up like iguanas and putting them on the set to be like, that's what you're gonna get for a dinosaur. You
Yeah.
got an iguana on there, like close enough. Like I don't know how many people had seen an iguana at that point in their lives moving around on film. Probably not
Mhm.
that many. So like I don't know, when you're just making stuff up as you go, when you're the pioneers of a certain art form, all of it looks like amazing. And like as Richard said, to like a 1933 eye, you're just getting over like dodging a train that was coming after you. So like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Not
Oh.
standing there dumbly as the train kind of just slowly approaches you and not knowing whether or not you need to get out of the way
Mhm.
because you've never seen something like this before.
yeah,
Mhm. I know sometimes we do some research in this, but in the Willis O'Brien, the reason those dinosaurs, or at least I guess they're Komodo dragons, is because they were created for another project. They were kind of left over from that other
mm,
project, and O'Brien was the first person to go from using essentially claymation or clay models, and then create this armature with this rubberized structure around it too. So
Yeah.
there sure was a lot of innovation in there.
Yeah, it wasn't just stop motion. I mean, that's the thing that most people remember, but it was really one of the first movies to use matte painting
Is that right?
and rear projection and miniatures.
Uh huh.
I mean, it really was this. In order to get the movie to look as good as it did, and like I said, especially for 1933, there were just so many unique techniques that had to be basically invented from scratch. I mean, you don't have a playbook to go off of. You're
Hmm.
literally inventing the playbook for how to do special effects
Yeah.
in a movie.
sure. It's like the Star Wars of it all. Like 50 years
Yeah,
later, like you know, George Lucas couldn't make this film with the technology that they had, with what he wanted to capture in his mind. So they just had to literally invent it as they were making it, which is like outstanding. It's like incredible to think that, like, oh yeah, well, we can't do this. Well, we've got to invent a new camera to do all this stuff, and we've got to figure out how this can it can't look how it has looked because I don't want that. I want something new. It's like I don't think that guy gets enough credit. I think he really took a beating for like the prequel stuff, but I think he doesn't get enough credit for just like, oh yeah, movies aren't what they are without him as a person pushing things forward. And I'm sure it was like that in the 30s when they were just like, okay, well, we have these fantastic ideas for monsters, and just putting like a fake fin on the back of a iguana or Komodo dragon, it just isn't going to cut it. It's got to have
Right.
life.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. So yeah, I definitely think if you think of how were the visual effects to not be effective, then there's no movie because
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just
Right.
there's nothing there.
There's no
All right.
spectacle. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Winfield, what's your first choice?
So I'll stay with the 1933 movie, and I'll stay with the spectacle. And the animation is there's a moment in King Kong when he's fighting a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and after he like defeats the T-Rex by wrestling it to the ground after a really extensive, it takes forever. Like you're like watching these,
Yeah.
claymation things like fight each other, and then like the animators take a moment to have the King Kong like fiddle with like the T-Rex's jaw after he breaks it, and it's like wow, like totally unnecessary.
Yeah.
Like he kills this thing, and then totally unnecessary. There's just like this little animation where he's like wiggling the jaw back and forth to make sure it's dead, and then he moves on to to picking up Ann Darrow, and it's like, oh, this is what they should teach. This is what animation eventually becomes. This is what like like this is him as a character.
Hmm.
Like he's more than just like a man in a gorilla suit fighting a man in a lizard suit. He like the people that animated it and put it together had these such intentions to make this character be curious, to be uh very human. I mean, even almost animalistic or human, I guess is even better to be like, he fiddles with this thing's mouth after he destroys it,
Yeah.
and he's just like,
Yeah.
and then he like moves along. He realizes it's dead, and it's just like King Kong is as much as he's like this, monster. He's a very human monster, and I think it's very different from Godzilla as a monster, who, at least at first, in the first 40 something years or 50 years of Godzilla as a movie, he goes in, he stomps in and terrorizes, and I don't know, maybe he does a
Hmm.
little like jump kick dance thing with his son or whatever the hell that is. Maybe,
Yeah.
in 1992, he dunks on
Yeah.
Charles Barkley with shades on. But like before that, he was just like this thing that lumbered across the screen and knocked down buildings and
Hmm.
got shot by whatever. But King Kong from the get go had these weird little like human interaction moments that came out of like, I don't know, uh, a puppeteer's imagination of like, who is this person as a character? And I think, like you said a few minutes ago, Jeff, like without these sorts of things, the movies don't work.
Yeah. And we don't have it's setting us up for maybe it's part of somebody's answer, but some sorrow at the end when this monster is destroyed. And I don't know if Frankenstein had come out already then, but we see these monsters that are either summoned to a place they don't belong or created and then trapped in cities and places where nature doesn't exist and then just tortured and treated horribly. I do wonder, does it help that he has a primate face that we can look Kong in the eye and see ourselves a little bit more so than Gojira? You can't really relate to this
Oh,
guy.
for sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
There's an emotion there. There's a humanity there for what it's worth. It's never felt with Godzilla. Like I think that in the kind of later versions of Godzilla and the ones that came out in the last 5 or 6 years, or even longer, they've tried to make him like this defender of humanity, this kind of
Yeah.
thing that arises out of the earth to defend the earth from
Hmm.
other obstacles. But like, I don't know, Godzilla's cool, but I don't care about him that much.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Manfredi, what's your second one?
All right. We've been talking about Godzilla as an ancillary sort of thing to King Kong. So let's just get right to it. King Kong versus Godzilla, the
Mm.
1962 version, the kaiju film that I did some research on this, and apparently it was based on a story outline that Willis O'Brien had,
Oh wow.
Hmm.
where Kong was supposed to be battling a giant Frankenstein type monster.
Oh.
Oh
Um,
no.
and he gave it to a producer, and the producer went and behind O'Brien's back sold it to Toho Studios, where they decided they'd always wanted to do a King Kong movie. So they said, "Well, King Kong, Godzilla, two great tastes that taste great together. What could go wrong?" And it's great. It's fantastic. And it does solve the question who would win in a battle between King Kong and Godzilla. The answer is it's at least we know it's not Godzilla,
Yeah.
because spoiler alert, into the movie they get into a huge fight, go tumble into the ocean, and only Godzilla comes out. Or
Mm.
only King Kong comes out, I'm sorry.
Mm.
Godzilla stays underwater, where maybe he's been killed, or
Hmm.
maybe
Hmm.
we'll see him again. Hard to say. But it's one of the more enjoyable of the original sort of non, the 60s kaiju uh, Godzilla films. And I think it's just neat. It's, boy, to be someone who is into those movies, or to be just, a moviegoer back in the 60s. That must have been like seeing Stone Cold and The Rock wrestling each
Yeah.
other, right?
Yeah.
Like, Hulk Hogan versus The Rock, these two generational talents kind of clashing with each other.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And the thing
You know,
makes,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, you go
No,
ahead.
no. I have a dumb. I have a dumb joke. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I'm here
You
for it.
you have a point. I have a joke. So go ahead.
Okay. Um, it made $10 million in the box office off of a budget of about $430,000.
Wow.
This thing was a big hit. And those Toho Studio movies always made money. I think we look at the Godzilla movies and we kind of scoff at them, but we forget that they were legitimate money making hit movies back in the 60s. And adding Kong to that, it's interesting that Kong had been sidelined as a character for so long. And when he does come back, he comes back as essentially, uh, I don't want to say second fiddle to another monster, because it is King Kong versus Godzilla and they are treated on equal footing, and King Kong does sort of win the battle. But it's definitely set in Godzilla's world. So I think it's interesting to kind of take this iconic character and you just drop him into another character's world and kind of see what happens.
Well, I think it was part of the peace agreement that they signed with Japan in
Yes,
45,
45.
that if they ever were to introduce a giant monster gorilla into the world, that if they were ever to feature against a giant irradiated monster from the Japanese world, that the American monster, the American generated monster, would win. So they just had to eat it at some point.
I wonder if that. So, had there been any films in between? Do we
There
do you
was
There
know?
must
Son.
have
There
been,
was Yeah. There was Son of Kong,
Okay.
but that
which
probably
came
came
out.
out. That probably came out right away. Like that must have been like, oh, well, King Kong's ahead. We got to get Son of Kong out by 1934 or something
It
like that.
came out in
Hmm.
33. Came out the same year as King Kong did. So
Oh, that's
And was
incredible.
that a prolonged custody battle? That was a movie about a custody battle between King Kong and Mrs. Kong.
oh, you're thinking Kong versus Kong.
Kong
Yeah.
versus Kramer versus Kong. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I was thinking about the television in the 50s and the introduction of like the shock theater package to TV stations and things like that, and how yeah, 57 by 57, some of these old black and white films with Frankenstein and the Mummy and Dracula were all coming back, and these characters were kind of now symbols for fear and horror, and so it's kind of cool that the kaiju kind of came back swinging there with the, but bring I would think, I would imagine King Kong was to audiences of that era a little bit more similar to maybe, I don't know, Frankenstein and the Mummy. It seems like stylistically it's more similar to those films, but definitely different than the genre of kaiju for sure. I
Yeah,
don't know. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. Okay, Winfield, what's your second one?
My second choice is the Gary Larson Far Side series of like King Kong cartoons, which had become like kind of basically like the uh, uh, I'm trying to think of the word for it, but basically this is how I know what King Kong is. Was, not a movie that had come out 50 years before I was ever born, but basically like the images of like King Kong as told as a joke through like a number of like Far Side cartoons, because
Yeah,
between 1933 with, I guess, Son of Kong, there was like, and the Godzilla versus Kong, he didn't really appear again until the 1970s. Is that right, Richard? Jeff, do you know? I think that he had gone like almost 40 years or something like that without really making a big splash of an appearance.
hmm
And
Hmm.
the Kong of my memory is like this big, just dopey gorilla as displayed like in a Gary Larson cartoon, as told as a joke.
yeah,
It's either that or it's like the image of him on the Universal Studios tour, like tearing the tram apart. But like even more so, I think of like an outline, like a big tape outline of uh, King Kong, like by the Empire State Building, as if they
yeah.
like taped off the body, or the taped off bodies underneath the taped off body of
hmm
King Kong. Or my favorite is just like this city that's been destroyed, that's on fire, and a bunch of police detectives trying to figure out who did this. And there's like a handkerchief with like the initials KK embroidered on it. And like Gary Larson, he captures everything perfectly and always have. But like King Kong for me has always been like this weird monster that's always been like this, also this strange joke, mostly because he really, other than being like the classic monster, wasn't in my life as a like a real thing in
hmm
any way. He was always like a cartoon. He was always he was just like a giant silly gorilla. And I think that there's been a lot of efforts in the last probably what, 25 years to turn him back into like a fearsome beast and this gruesome thing. But
It
I don't
seems
know,
like
for the most of my life he was just like kind of a cartoon character.
yeah, that's funny to hear you say that because it seems like that definitely happened over decades with the Universal monsters as they turned into Halloween decorations and there were
And
baby
cereals,
versions,
yeah.
cereals, and things like that. They became uh, it became entertainment and silliness. And yeah, as a kid, I do remember the kind of goofy King. It seems like in my dad's Playboy there might be some lurid version of King Kong or something like that. Yeah, yeah,
I mean, the only other version of King Kong I remember was like a joke in a dirty, like uh like I had like a kid's joke book that was like
uh,
uh the punchline ultimately with this person coming back and saying like King Kong's balls. I thought you said ping pong balls, or the reverse of that.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
that's it. Like King
yeah.
Kong from like 1933 to like 1976. He had 50 years of just like being turned into like a
That's
cartoon, a
hilarious.
joke, a weird
Yeah.
thing.
Okay, dudes, we are at our halftime, and you folks, you can hear we're running out of ideas. Um, Come on. I mean, we're at King Kong. Last week was Donkey Kong. Before that was like, uh, come on. You got to help us out. Message us. This is an intervention between you and us, an idea intervention. So go onto the Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram. Just type in any random word you can think of, and we'll accept that as a suggestion for a topic. But while you're doing that, go out and download, rate, and review past episodes. Search King Kong. We may have done this topic before. I don't know. Maybe we have, or something like it, or maybe just big monkeys. Probably, probably have. So we'd appreciate if you wouldn't mind sharing this podcast with other people, and want to also promote My Ship Story podcast, which is
Ooh.
a
Ooh.
collab. One of our hosts here has done that podcast recently, and they are a lot of fun, and they tell great stories. If you've ever been on a cruise ship, maybe you worked on a cruise ship and wondered about the inside scoop about how those operate and what zany things happen, the My Ship Story podcast digs deep and shares a lot of fun stories about that. So we're back. It's going
Great.
to be Manfredi's third.
Cool. Third choice. It is a scene in the 2005 Peter Jackson film King Kong.
Ooh.
Now, I more or less enjoyed Peter Jackson's King Kong. I think it was almost impossible for it to live up to the hype that everyone had in their head about it, about the guy who tamed Lord of the Rings and was able to find a way to take this unfilmable book series and actually film it and make it incredible. What was he going to do with King Kong? And I think it was a victim of its own expectations in a lot of ways. I think on its own it's a pretty good movie. There is one scene in it though that is just ridiculous.
I'm
And it's
so excited to figure out what I'm
Yeah.
in my head. I'm running through like half a dozen scenes that like I I'm so excited to hear what you say.
it is the scene after Kong has wrecked the theater and has started rampaging through New York looking for Ann Darrow. And he finds her. And then they wind up going ice skating. Like romantic date ice skating, which brings up several questions. He is being chased by the police, the army, the National Guard, God knows who else at this point. And they just lose him for about 10 minutes. And in that time, everyone involved thinks, you know what would be great? Should we keep running from everybody? Now let's stop and have a skate. Now I get it. It's meant to show the humanity in Kong. It's meant to show that he's more human than many humans would be.
Yeah.
Um, but it's patently fucking ridiculous. And it just takes you out of the movie. It's like suddenly a scene from a John Cusack rom com
Mm,
got
yeah.
spliced into King Kong, and they just swapped CGI'd Cusack out with a giant ape, which probably doesn't take that much work. But the whole thing just absolutely. I remember watching in the theater, and it just sort of you could see everyone kind of looking around like, is this happening?
This is
Because
really
this is weird.
He
Yeah.
did
So that yeah.
he didn't need to complete a successful like triple sow cow, which is
no.
Right.
That was
like that
egregious.
was just he did not. I mean, to the degree of difficulty
Mhm.
that a gigantic ape could have done that, which is amazing and with given his weight, but to land it perfectly with the flourish, you
I'm a
know.
little surprised that the rental shop had skates his size.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. I mean, I this movie is beloved to me in a certain way because I think it combines such an amazing sense of like strange like body horror and
Mm.
or like creature horror and romance and heartbreak, which we'll get to my next pick. But yeah, you know, I think it is like it was like a bloated moment of like uh just a little too much,
Yeah.
just too much. Just like pull that back. It doesn't make like Anne cares for this creature. You don't need her to like have a flirty moment with him too.
hmm The 1985 Godzilla
Hmm.
uh, had rollerblading in it in that same scene. So at that time, I kind of thought, well, this is dated. Rollerblading is not going to be a thing forever. So, but I could see why Peter Jackson had the balls to do that because he thought I'm improving upon that. Do you don't think that just that I could see how we're from a directorial pacing standpoint, Peter Jackson maybe thought we need a break here. We need a pause
Sure.
because
Yeah.
this is the tragedy. We know the ape's going to die, or we know some bad shit's going to happen. But yeah, ice skating is pretty ridiculous.
I mean, at that point, King Kong, he's big in the movie. Like in the first King Kong, he's like 18 feet tall,
Mhm.
although he kind of fluctuates in size. By the time
Yeah.
he's fighting Godzilla, he's 100 feet tall, or however big Godzilla is. Then you kind of bring him back, and I think in the Peter Jackson one, he's 20 something feet tall. Um, I don't know, 20 something feet tall is big, and it is gigantic for a gorilla. I don't know. My apartment building's like 20 something feet tall. We're only two
Mhm.
stories. I could see how a gorilla could get lost within a gigantic city like New York, especially when, you know, hey, they're following a banana trail the other way or
Mhm.
whatever. I assume. Because
The most ridiculous. There was a couple things. There was some side story with a ship, a man on the ship who was like a worker. They had some weird. I don't know. It's like some little intriguing moment that they never followed up on.
Right.
But for me, the weirdest part was so Jack Black's character's kind of a director or something going there to look for something sensational for his movie. And at one point, I remember them running past dinosaurs to get to King Kong. Like, stop. There's dinosaurs.
yeah,
Film the dinosaurs. Those are awesome. You got dinosaurs.
Yeah,
Those are cool.
I think if given the choice between seeing a dinosaur or a 20-foot tall ape, I
Yeah.
would choose the dinosaur. You're right.
Yeah. We got those. They're smaller than that one, but we got them.
I've seen
Yeah.
gorillas before.
Yeah.
I more or
Oh,
less know what they look like.
yeah. Okay. Michael Winfield. And is this going to be Grape Ape or like a cartoon
Magilla
yes.
gorilla.
Megala Gorilla?
No. Since you mentioned the dinosaurs, I'll come back to my last point later. But just the entire concept of Skull Island as this kind of um,
Hmm.
hidden island that has been away from man or mankind, that has developed its own unique flora and fauna that is all dangerous, that has these giant beasts, that has dinosaurs, that has giant gorillas, that has, poisonous plants that'll kill you, that has um, uh, uh, the entire like ecosystem around this island that is surrounded by fog, that is surrounded by like dangerous reefs that can't get to, that you need a treasure map to get to. That that idea that these beings can exist or fight for survival amongst themselves on this tremendous island in the mid Atlantic or South Pacific or whichever ocean it's in is just tremendous. That, like, I think that at some point in the 1930s, uh, mankind had almost realized, or the filmmakers had realized, there's nothing more to discover. We can circumnavigate the globe. We can fly airplanes around the globe. We can almost go anywhere. The world has been discovered. There's not much more to do. But what if there's this island that no one has discovered, and on that island is
Mhm.
this giant? I think the idea of Skull Island is just phenomenal. I think the treasure map to get there is outstanding, and um I don't know, just like the place that's out of time that can feature dinosaurs, that can feature giant animals of every sort is just perfectly wild. And I think that the mystery and the intrigue behind it all is just a fantastic conception by everyone around.
Yeah, that is a fun thing. It almost seems like a little bit late to be kind of inspired by like the Darwin and HMS Beagle and the journeys there, but almost feels like it's kind of a fantastical components of another era. Isn't there sci-fi like the island at the top of the world, or it seems like going to the center of the world to find exotic beasts.
There's
It does seem,
elements of that. I know in
yeah.
like the 1970s or early 80s, they had like, X-Men comics kind of had their, oh, what was the name of I got to think of the place that they went to. It'll come to me in a second. But there was like this, a hidden island amongst Antarctica,
Yeah.
that the Savage Land, where like Khazar was, or like there are places that are far removed from man, but still are somehow accessible if you just kind of search hard enough. And of course, on that an island, I mean, it seems like that a giant gorilla. How big is this island? It's to be so big that it can contain a, you know, 40-foot tall gorilla, but so small that it
Hmm.
can still go unseen or unnoticed by the powers that be. Seems I don't know, just fascinating. And as someone that draws dopey islands with his son too, I'm going to bring it back to Felix. That draws like we draw like treasure maps and draw dangers on there and draw nonsense like, how come we haven't drawn a giant gorilla yet?
Hmm.
Next step.
Is Kong always the cop of that island? Is he always the guy
Hmm.
who's
Oh no,
regulating? No.
all gorillas are bad. AGAB, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh
Oh my god!
no, I
Somebody's
mean
trying.
this.
There was a shooting on the island. Guess who ran the other way?
Yeah, oh, that.
Oh,
Oh
sorry,
he,
boy.
not
yeah,
funny.
he climbed to
Apologize.
the top, climbed to the top of the mountain and just hid like a coward.
Apologies.
Oh,
Uh,
we lost 3
we
listeners.
lost
That
our
were just,
listener.
yeah, that was the end of it.
Okay, Manfredi, what's your last choice?
Conveniently enough, it is the movie Kong Skull Island.
Okay,
The 2000, what year was that made? 2017.
17.
Good
And
movie.
it's
Good movie.
delightful. That's my
Yeah.
main point I wanted to make behind it. If you haven't seen it, if you thought it looked like a really silly movie, if you, when it came out, you thought this is not for me, do yourself a favor. Go find it on streaming and rent it or view it or whatever you have to do to see it. Because it's a treasure of a movie. I think they do an exceptional job of telling the Kong origin story, because that's essentially what this is in the larger picture of the, or they call it the monster verse, the new
Yeah,
monster verse that they're creating with Kong and
Yeah,
Godzilla and
they
Rodan
came and
and
they tried to stop the trade routes going to Kong Island, and then the 2 Jedi came over and
yes.
had to prevent that, and then it led to the war with the. Yep.
But it's got a great cast. Got Tom Hiddleston, Brie Larson, Samuel L. Jackson, John Goodman, John C. Riley.
yeah.
So it's got this like kind of sneaky great cast, and it's just the action scenes work. You get a sense for Kong's humanity, which is I think always one of the most important aspects of a good Kong movie. Um, you have a clearly defined bad guy, which you don't always have in the Kong movies, but this one is pretty clear that Samuel L.
Yeah.
Jackson's batshit crazy army general or whatever he is the bad guy in this movie. And it looks great. It won or it received an Oscar nomination for best visual effects, and it should have. It looks fantastic. And I remember watching it when because my son Simon started getting into Godzilla and Kong and things like that, and we sat down and watched it on TV one day. I had completely missed it when it came out. I was one of those people who just thought, this is not for me.
Same here. Same here.
And we sat down and watched it, and I was just like, this is really good. I think it was better than the Peter Jackson King Kong movie. Certainly, I'd rewatch it. I
Yeah.
have rewatched it several times, and I haven't rewatched the Peter Jackson King Kong. I think it did a better job of balancing the action with the non-action scenes.
Hmm.
I don't know. I just think it's great.
I think it does some. Well, for me, the kind of movie within the movie is John C. Riley. Seems like the
Uh-huh.
director just kind of let him roll on along on some things where he is doing some comedy character moments that are kind of hilarious. It's almost like his characters that he plays in Will Ferrell movies. This a person who's really frazzled beyond understanding of the world around him, or like when Dewey Cox does acid.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of that guy. Isn't he? He's talking to another person, and he kind of in the middle of the conversation questions if if he's actually talking out loud or if he's talking to himself.
Yeah, there's a little bit of Dr. Steve Brule in
Yeah, yeah,
his
yeah,
performance here, but
yeah.
it works.
I think one thing that that film benefits from is a little bit of tonal mimicry, like, in a couple moments, it's Apocalypse Now, um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's every Vietnam, or it's Platoon, or if it's every Vietnam film you've ever seen, which, like, the Joker kind of did that too. You know, sometimes it's Taxi Driver,
Mm.
sometimes it's
Uh-huh.
King of Comedy. So I think that film kind of benefited from some of that too,
Sure.
which you don't see that much in those kind of movies. And also, Samuel L. Jackson has played villains before, um, but even in something like, was it The Big Blue, or there's some now he's in the Big Monkey movie, but or the Big Ape movie. He was in the Big Shark movie before,
Oh,
you know.
Deep Blue
Deep Blue
Sea.
Deep Blue
Sea.
Sea, yeah, yeah.
Which gets me to one day we have to record the Mount Rushmore of ending theme songs that also sum up the movie as they are singing the end credits.
Oh,
It's a long
was that an
title.
LL Cool J?
That was an
Yeah.
LL Cool J jam, and that is probably like my number one uh, song with "My Hand Is Like a Shark's Fin." That basically takes everything that you saw on screen, puts it into a rap song,
Yeah,
and has a ridiculous, chorus
yeah,
throughout the entire thing. But we'll get to that.
yeah.
Did Ice Cube have something similar for Anaconda? I'm looking that up right now.
Oh, please look it up because Adam's Family Groove is up there, and
Wild Wild West. Does he do that in the
yeah,
Wild Wild
we'll
West?
get
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Wrap it up, Mr. Winfield.
Well, my last choice is the kind of the heartbreaking death of King Kong in the Peter Jackson 2005 movie. Now, maybe I have more affection for this movie than you, Richard, but all the setup for Kong throughout this movie, I think, was so very effective, even though you knew it was coming the entire time. And I think that's one thing that the kind of legendary monster verse, kaiju verse, whatever um, King Kong Godzilla things have is these characters probably aren't ever going to die, right? Like King Kong's going to go on, Godzilla's going to go on, they're going to fight each other, they're going to go on to fight other things, and the universe is going to expand. But the King Kong movie that Peter Jackson told um, has an ending to this character. And in spite of the like kind of super hokey ice skating scene, they really set up like a humanity and a sadness and like an impact for this character throughout the movie. He's this kind of, he's kind of this old boomer on this island that's sitting there. He's the last of his kind. He's so sad. He's alone. He meets this woman that, uh, I don't know, he's eaten all the others. They're all dead. Like everyone else that's been presented to him is like, I don't know, not that interesting. And this, uh, this other woman comes along and tries to entertain him. And by the end of the movie, like he falls off the thing and she's genuinely sad for him. She's come to like some sort of kind of like Stockholm syndrome kind of sort of relationship with him that
Mhm.
like, oh, this guy is my capture, but he's the person that's captured me. But
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I feel bad that he's dead now. I mean, he was just a giant monkey.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know. I think they just captured the end of it so well in spite of like the super hokey line that's tagged on the end that I think doesn't work. It's strange how it doesn't work. Like at the end of the first King Kong, the someone says it wasn't beauty that killed the beast, or it wasn't the fall that killed the
Mhm.
beast, it was the beauty. And I think they tagged it on the end as well. It's like, I know what you're going for, but I almost wish they didn't say it
Yeah.
because because it was built up through the rest of the it was built up through the rest of the movie. Like you could have just said, they could have had like an abbreviated version of that or some sort of I don't know. They could have
Mhm.
signaled it without actually saying it, but it was sad. I remember feeling genuinely sad to see this monster that I knew was going to die and be shot, and multiple times be shot down by airplanes because he was kind of terrorizing the city. And what were they going to do with him? He's just this giant animal. They were going to do anything with him. Also, the scene where they cut him up at the end and feed all the starving people of New York. Unnecessary. They
Yeah,
did they did not need to show like the production line where they're just, all these little orphans and
yeah.
street vagabonds are eating pieces of gorilla meat for, the next year and a half that got them through the Great Depression. But um I don't know, it was just the pathos at the end. It still really affects, like, it's one of those movies that, like, it's hard for me to watch that, and it's hard for me to watch the end of the Royal Tenenbaums, where they come
Hmm.
to like some sort of understanding with like the father and son moment.
Yeah.
I don't know. Those two movies from 1990, 2005, and I don't know,
Well, that's pretty
whenever
interesting.
Royal Tenenbaums hit.
It does seem like that was the goal of the filmmaker the entire time. Like if I can humanize this character and make you feel empathy for them, then I've succeeded. And I think of how well Peter Jackson did that with some characters in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, um, like Gollum. I felt sorry for the dude. He was a bastard, but I could really empathize with his plight. So yeah, I think Jackson had been really good at making relatable characters. I will say one thing that really peeved me, took me out of that
Mm.
movie, was Jack Black. Like I just wasn't ready for him. I wasn't sure if he was being comedic
I think you're
or
right. I think
dramatic.
you're
Yeah,
entirely right. Jack, I think Jack Black was just riding a high at that point, that they needed someone to be like this big kind of like, New York Hollywood director guy that
yeah,
wouldn't stop at anything. And uh, I could see that being cast 10 different
yeah.
ways and feeling exactly this, just as gratified.
And now that I think about, Charles Grodin was in the '76 King Kong, I
Yeah, which
think.
we didn't talk about
No.
for many reasons.
I
But
don't know if I've seen it. I don't. It's one of those movies that I maybe I've seen, but I have no like real great memory of. But maybe that's the 19. That's the Universal ride at Universal Studios. That's the only version I know
Yeah.
of it. Was like, oh, that movie or whatever.
Yeah, I think there was a rights. Well, speaking of Universal, I think there was like a Dana Gould has a great uh, blog series called The Cinemorph, where he talks about the origins of that film, and somehow Paramount had like rights to a novelization, Universal had rights to the movie,
Yeah,
and
and
they
Dino De Laurentiis. I read a little bit about this. Looking at this, like there was a big court battle over like how King Kong could be portrayed in that he was in like the oh, what's the thing? The
he had to be Southern, speak with a drawl,
he had a really big corn
corn cob
stalks
hat.
wheat stalks sticking out of his mouth. No, like uh he was in like the public domain
oh
basically
yeah,
as a character, but he wasn't in the public domain as things that have been portrayed on the screen. So
okay,
there's a lot of like rights of like, well, you can create any King Kong story, but he can't do the things. He can't climb uh,
oh yeah,
the Empire State Building,
okay.
which I think is why he climbed the the Twin Towers. The
He
yeah,
he can only
like it was
play
things like that that
shuffleboard
they're like, uh,
or go ice skating, but you're not going to do that, are you?
Who would do that? What a stupid idea.
oh man,
All right, so let's rate some. This has
yeah,
been
go for
fun
it.
to talk about this. I would love to just kind of honor the innovation of Willis O'Brien by choosing the special effects of the film as something to call out, and then I I love the acknowledgement that yeah, for a while as a kid, uh, Kong was a joke. He was just kind of this goofy cartoon thing. So let's go with the Gary Larson. And Kong Skull Island was a great film that kind of brought him back into the fold. So let's go with that. And since we were all talking about it, and since he's kind of I think a big part of modern cinema, let's just go with Peter Jackson, uh, the film in general, but specifically the kind of the emotional denouement at the end. So, Dana Ma, how's she been? I haven't talked to her in a while.
I think we
She's
played
good.
yeah, we played kickball with her, right?
Did we?
Was
Dana
it
Ball?
She's good.
Okay.
She's really good.
Dana Ball?
All right. This has been the Mount Rushmore of King Kong. I'm always Jeff.
I'm Richard.
I'm Michael.
Oh, thanks, guys.